No, I didn't imagine when I got up this morning that I would actually contribute to this debate, but I was motivated by Senator Franklin's contribution in particular. I really didn't imagine that I was going to see a dedicated unionist get up and suggest that a major institution in the country employing 600 people should be gotten rid of. Let me rephrase that a little bit because I know he'll be tempted to stand up. Gotten rid of, but redeployed to other areas. And then there were a series of other points made that I think are worth answering that weren't fully dealt with by the contributions of some of the other senators today. But before getting straight into that, I think one of the key points in this bill concerns the retirement age. And I agree with some of the contributions that were made in terms of what experience brings to an organization. I think that's very, very key. And what's being suggested here is not out of line with what's being done in other jurisdictions. It's notable here that we're talking about officers of a particular rank. And there are other jurisdictions, notably in the United States, India, UK, I found examples of, where depending on the specialism of the military personnel and their rank, the retirement age can be as late as 68. We're talking about people here now who are recently retired and below 65, above 55. Now, sir, this is entirely sensible, I think, given the historical perspective. I'm not a soldier. I haven't been in the Army. I haven't been in the Cadet Corps, but I grew up in a house with an avid military historian, and the place was full of books covering battles from the ancient Greeks all the way through to the Vietnam War in the 20th century. And a little boy cannot help but read some of those, excited as they are to play cowboys and Indians and soldier and so on. And there are always two battles in particular in that vast millennium. There's a lot to choose from because we're pretty warlike people. But there are two in particular that always stuck with me as examples of where age, youth, and experience combine, sometimes in a unique and innovative way to deliver a result that they might not otherwise have done. The first one, and I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this, but there are things that have stuck with me for a long time. It was a battle between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, the Battle of Kursk. It involved 10,000 tanks. The Germans had never been defeated. Their Panzer battalions. They inspired fear in their enemies. They had very experienced generals, notably von Manstein, over 60 at the time. And the Russians also had older generals, but not as old because their ranks had been purged by Stalin, but they were all around the age of 50. What was notable is that the Russians the Soviets I should say, put together a series of defensive tactics, 3-zone defense, and individually for their soldiers, what appeared to be insane approaches to fighting Panzer tanks. They had groups of 3 men with single-shot anti-tank rifles, firing a shot from less than 200 meters away from these tanks, the most advanced in the world, and then running to another position. And with this combination of tactics and strategy, they actually delivered the first defeat of the Nazi war machine in 1943. But the second battle, which I think is in a way far more revealing, it's older, it's the Battle of Isandlwana between the Zulus and the British. It's the first time that a vastly out-technologied army was able to defeat the best the world had to offer, a column of the British army, and the Zulus were armed with not much more than spears. And they had a tactic they called the horns, the chest of the buffalo and the horns that they used. The British, it's true, were arrogant, complacent, all the rest of it. But that victory was led by a Zulu king called Katisweo, 53 years old at the time. And in those days, this is 1878, I think, the average life expectancy, it couldn't have been much more than 53. So in both examples, whether the Soviet Union or the Zulus, they looked to their experience, which came with age, to make sure that they could, if you like, punch above their weight, do something that was unexpected, and not lose that resource that age and experience gives. So I think viewed from that perspective, this bill is really pretty straightforward. It's hard to resist. And I just tack on those examples to the eloquent ones that were given by both sides so far. Now, sir, there's some other points I wanted to to come on to, because it was suggested that there's really not much point to having a Barbados defense force. There's no defense force. There's no war. They don't have anything to do except sit around and polish their equipment and their shoes, it was said. Sir, in different contexts, I've heard people say, not I'm the best shot in the room, but I'm a great driver. I don't need car insurance. And you see this attitude in all walks of life. The reality is, if you don't perceive a risk, and if you think there's no risk, what's really happening is you just don't see what risk there might be, either today or in the future. So a defense force, like an army, is an insurance policy. But it has another role that's closely tied to that, and that is that it's very dissuasive. In the same way people buy burglar alarms, they advertise the fact. They have a plaque that might say, this property protected by G4S Guardsmen, Amalgamated. They got a little alarm bell with a big siren on the top of it. So you know if you want to burgle this house that you're going to attract attention. It is dissuasive. And it's one of the reasons the police, when they patrol in a very visible way because they want to dissuade wrongdoing. So when we sit around and we say there's nothing for the army to do, it is partly a function of their success at dissuading others to do mischief. It might not be in the form of a war, and I'll come on to some of the things that the Barbados Defense Force does that have already been touched on, but there was one important aspect I thought that was missed. You got a defense force, it's an insurance policy, just like car insurance or house insurance. You don't always need it, but it's there when you do need it. A defense force is not something you can whip up in 3 weeks to confront some threat. It has to be a standing force. That is just the reality of the logistics of the matter. Now, sir, earlier we had several senators talk about the humanitarian efforts that the Army does that aren't necessarily identified as a primary function, and I don't think they are, but they're important secondary functions. We didn't talk about, I don't think we talked about the distribution efforts for the vaccine for the pandemic. This is another similar to humanitarian effort that's important. I will speak into the mic. I'm pretty sure you can hear me though, but nonetheless, the piece I thought that was missed earlier in some of the contributions, in these external efforts, be it humanitarian relief, vaccine, distribution, and in some cases where we've been asked to help with domestic disturbances in neighboring territories, is all these actions are external. You cannot have a police force do those things. The external, they're part of our external relations. And this is more than just having a good name and a reputation. These things are reciprocal. This is an important feature of the defense force. If you take it away, I do wonder what the impact would be on our relations with our neighbors, for example. I know Senator Franklin often says he's a Caribbean man, many references to St. Lucia, so on and so forth. Now, there's another facet to that, and it's that in the contribution of the Senator, he also talked about those nations that do not have an army. I cannot remember the number you cited. I think it was 21 or 28. Well, the ones that are sovereign states, I think, are probably around 21. And the ones that are dependencies might be higher than that. Some of those examples, of course, can be found in the Caribbean. We have some neighbors, rather than have a defense force of the size of ours, they rely on the RSS, to which Barbados and the BDF is a major contributor. So viewed that way, those countries that do not have a standing army, they've outsourced it, if you like. They rely on the RSS. And again, this is not just a matter of us paying for them. This is being a member of CARICOM. This is being a good global citizen. And there is reciprocity that's involved. Now, I'm not just going to stop with the RSS and those regional countries that don't have a standing army. In that list of 21 sovereign states or 28 sovereign states or however many it is, you can class them in certain categories. This is not a collection of states who have decided, I don't want to make war, I only want to make love. These are people who either by choice or design don't have a standing army, but still cover their requirements. So I talked about the St. Lucia's and St. Vincent's and so on. But there are other small states, some of them rich, and you think of Andorra or Monaco, that have specific treaties. In the case of Monaco, I think their treaty is over 200 years old with France. France cover their defensive requirements. Andorra have a similar agreement, I think, I believe it's with the Italians, and so on. These are not states that wave the flag of, we don't have an army, look how good we are. They have simply outsourced it to someone else to actually do. I'm going to come to Costa Rica. That's an excellent example. But first, I'm going to talk about some of the other categories, the Micronesian states, the very tiny Pacific islands, where in their case, this is Vanuatu, for example, or Tuvalu, I think is how I pronounce the other one. These are places that actually cannot afford it. They can't buy the burglar alarm. We got the burglar alarm. They can't actually afford it. And finally, if we're going to talk about Costa Rica, you know, Costa Rica is an example I've come across before. No army by constitutional decree, if you like, a constitution in 1948. So I believe if you check it, it's 1948. But the fact is that what we call a Barbados Defense Force, for example, with the RSS airplanes at Grantley Adams International Airport or the Coast Guard, they also have. They have an air security system or air surveillance system. They have paramilitary units specifically to deal with the drug trade, any commerce that comes through there. They may not call it an army, but they still do the same things that the BDF does. And the reason I say it's such a good example is because we think of Costa Rica and this 1948 Act and we think they don't spend any money on soldiers. Well, actually, the spending that they're spending on these military requirements, excluding police now, I'm just talking about comparable eggs to eggs, oranges to oranges examples, is about 0.7 to 0.8% of their GDP. Barbados spends 0.9%. It ranks 129th out of 166 countries. So this is not some case where we're spending like a drunken sailor on the army. We're spending money that represents quite phenomenal value for money. When you consider the things that it has spent on, and you consider the track record that historically it has managed to perform.
Iceland.
Oh, Iceland. Yes, thank you. You're helping, you're my straight man today. Iceland is an excellent example because Iceland geographically is a strategic staging point for NATO. Iceland is a member of NATO. In exchange for disbanding their army, I think in 2006, the quid pro quo is that the United States gets to use Iceland as a staging post. Iceland has their defensive requirements covered by the Americans. So they have saved money, and you might say they have no army, but they still have managed to outsource their requirements. I invite you to give me another example so I can talk about that as well, but otherwise I will move on. Panama, thank you.
Let's go, Rhoda, let's go.
Panama, another interesting example. And everything is contextual. So historically, you look at Noriega, he had turned the military into his own private army. When the Americans did go in there, whether you like it or not, when they did go in there, they actually took a state apparatus that had become a narco state in the hands of Noriega. Historically, their army has been, first of all, disbanded, and they haven't been encouraged to recreate it because of that passage of history. It is not a case of let's make love, not war. It's a case strictly on context. Again, if you want to give me another one, I'll try my best on that too. Where?
You did it already.
Yeah, I covered that, please, you know. It could well have been, but the speaker heard me. So, sir, although the guts of this bill is about the retirement age, you know, I tried to cover that very carefully, the importance in military terms, and just common sense tells us that you don't throw out somebody who's 55 years old without a cost, and the cost is the expertise and value that they can bring your organization, be it the Army or any other business or private or public enterprise. I would hate, the reason I stood up is that I would hate that some of these things get on the record because we don't have the energy to turn over the stones and look exactly at the reasons why some people don't have an army and other people have an army and so on and so forth. So, sir, that is, I'm obliged to you. That is my contribution, and I support this bill.
Thank you very much, Senator Adams. Any other speakers? Senator Holder.
Thank you, Mr. President. After listening to Senator Adams, I didn't think I had to make a contribution, sir, because I am satisfied that the senator this morning, who in his usual "the sky is falling" retort, was rebuked in that presentation by Senator Adams. But nonetheless, you cannot have, Mr. President, you cannot have your own facts. And the senator stood up this morning and spoke about all of these countries that don't have a military and so on, and Senator Adams dealt with that. And actually, Mr. President, it is against the backdrop of that presentation that I want to make a very short contribution this afternoon. Because, sir, about 80% of that presentation that I listened to this morning sought to suggest to us in this chamber and through you to the public at large that our defense force, our military is not a relevant institution in this day and age. And nothing, sir, could be further from the truth. Matter of fact, I am satisfied that every right-thinking Barbadian and every right-thinking individual who has been listening to this debate and understand the amendments that are before us will agree, sir, that this is a very critical institution that must be retained. Sir, instead of, as his colleague would normally do, give us a well-researched presentation, instead of doing that, and maybe even helping to guide the national conversation around, well, what can we do at this point in time to bring our defense force and to help our defense force to adapt to the changes. Well, we heard what we heard this morning. Sir, by way of context, it is important to set context. It is important to set context. Sir, I'm not listening to any asides because the opposition senator there does not speak from any research position clearly. So, sir, we understand and appreciate, as all of the members who spoke before, and made the points that we all agree to, that we cannot at this point in time contemplate agreeing to persons retiring at 50, 55, and so on, because they have so much more to offer. It is important, I think, to look contextually at what our defense force, our military, if you will, was and its origins and how it has evolved. Because I heard Senator Greenidge made the point this morning that this amendment we are making now vis-a-vis the age limit, this was a part of the British system. And therefore, we have to seek to bring our defense force into the Barbadian reality. And what are the needs for us as a country at this point in time? And we know that we have an institution in the defense force.
I can't help but speak up. You know, the retirement age in Britain is for the army is 60. But this is not part of the British system. You are misleading the House. You know, this is our system. This was developed by us, started in 1978, and continuing. So this wasn't, yes, we got some more things, regulations, orders when we first had them. We got them from England, but never about retirement. It was 60.
Continue, Senator Dr. Holder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not so sure why the senator sought to raise at this point in time, as I was simply referring to comments made by Senator Greenidge. So I made reference to what I heard Senator Greenidge speak in his presentation earlier. I know that it is post-lunch, so I suspect that the goodly senator is still in a place where he's trying to digest his food. And maybe a bit uncomfortable at this point. But sir, the fact is, the historical perspective is what I was seeking to share, because I just want to make two very short and simple points this afternoon, sir. We know that the Defense Force, the military, if you will, has a history back in, I believe it was the 17th century, sir, and we all know how it started, how it was started, how it evolved. It was there to protect, yes, the planter class from the slave population and so on. But also we know when we look at the history, sir, that it changed somewhat as we got to the 20th century. You know, the focus was on, yes, protecting the British Empire, and later after that we saw how the US then came into the region with a number of military outposts and so on. So we know that based on the origins of the military, the Defense Force, if we can use those two terms interchangeably, sir, focused a lot on protecting the country from wars and, you know, invasions and the like. And I believe, sir, in this 21st century, there's still some need for that traditional purpose of the military to continue, because right here in the region, in the Caribbean, we are part of CARICOM. We know that there's still some issues relative to border claims, you know, between Venezuela and Guyana, between Guatemala and Belize. So those traditional roles are still very much, I believe, needed at this point in time. But it's really the non-traditional purpose, the non-traditional roles I really want to focus my short presentation on, sir, to suggest that as we go forward, instead of pontificating that there's no need for such an institution, pontificating that there's no need for such an organization, that we understand that those roles have changed over time. And as a country, we want, therefore, to ensure we can reposition ourselves, reposition our Defense Force, to address the issues of the 21st century that we are in. We heard a lot of talk this morning about the 1983 invasion in Grenada and so on. Fine, we know that those things are not the case now. But there are two key points, sir, that I think would help me to bring out the non-traditional role and the non-traditional importance of our Defense Force at this point. One, I think earlier people referred to this as the humanitarian effort, but it is the support for this disaster response, natural disasters and the like. There's research that suggests that there's more economic fallout for a country, more economic cost for a country to recover following a natural disaster, Mr. President, than some of the other issues that affect the economy. And we know in this region that is prone to natural disasters that this is clearly a concern for us. And this is a critical role to be played by our Defense Force in providing that support, in providing that humanitarian aid to help our countries to recover. I want, therefore, to make the case this afternoon that that is a key responsibility that our Defense Force has and a role that they have to play. We know the case with Dominica We have seen the issue in the Bahamas and several of the other countries, and right here in Barbados just a few weeks ago, sir. For, I believe it's the first time since some, might have even pontificated, since Jeanette, that we have seen Category 1 hurricane it was, in the form of Elsa, and the impact on our country, and therefore the role that the Defense Force had to play in helping with the recovery efforts and helping with the stabilization efforts. And I don't think that we can discount, sir, that this is an important responsibility for our military, for our Defense Force. And because of where we are located and because we are prone to these disasters, not only hurricanes, we know of earthquakes, we know, sir, recently of the eruption in St. Vincent and the Grenadines of the La Chifrère volcano and the impact on our country here and I believe St. Lucia and others. And so these humanitarian efforts, Mr. President, I submit to you, sir, and to this chamber are critical roles that the Defense Force has to play. But not only that, in this 21st century environment that we're in, I believe that security will take on a new face. This is no longer, sir, looking through the lenses of the Cold War. We know that the Cold War is over. And so those challenges that we experienced back then, vis-a-vis the battle of capitalism, if you will, against communism, and the impact of this war on our countries, vis-a-vis the the type of ideology and the political agenda of our countries, we know that, sir, has changed. So the Cold War is over. But we are seeing now in this environment a new type of security threat. It is not, I would even suggest, not weapons of mass destruction. No. I prefer to call it weapons of mind destruction. Because that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing now, sir, the threat for the minds of individuals. We're seeing the threat, sir. We're seeing the threat of cybersecurity. We're seeing the threat, sir, of globalization. We're seeing the threat, sir, of the rise of the multinational and the international organization. I don't listen to a side, sir. I don't listen to a sides. Right? So we know, Mr. President, that the challenges of national security have changed. And so our military, at this point in time, will adapt to those changes. Sir, I love action movies. I do. Now, I don't watch soap operas and I'm not a great fan of those kind of dramas. But I like action movies. I like movies like, Mercury Rising. I like the Transformers and such like, Mr. President. And I like these pictures because I like to see how Hollywood tries to paint that picture, Mr. President, of maybe some of the challenges that are on the horizon for our global economies. The impact of cybersecurity on our countries. We talked some time ago about contagion when the global coronavirus pandemic first came on the scene. All of these things, sir, are now, in my view, issues of national security that a defense force or your military must now pay attention to. White House down. I know what Senator Grant knows about these pictures. And, yes, the angel has fallen and so on. And what you see with all of these pictures, sir, is the new role that your military will play. The significance now of trying to protect your country, not in the, as I said, not in the pre-Cold War methodology, but now using your mind and understanding the significance of a different type of weaponry to be able to protect your citizens and to protect your country. So I think, sir, that this is a new environment that we're in. This is a new season that we're in. This 21st century environment, as they said, has brought now new challenges to our economies, to our countries. There are new threats, sir. There are new threats relative to new types of weapons, trafficking, drugs, and all of these things that do not necessarily require the same approaches that we've seen in the past, but now require a new type of strategy to address, a new type of strategy to deal with. And so I think that in light of these points, sir, in light of the issues of a new type of migration and the environmental issues that we are seeing, that our defense force today, our military today, is now required to maybe, change, to adapt, to adjust to the security demands of the state. And so, sir, I am very much in support of the amendment. I'm in support of the fact that, yes, we must provide an opportunity for those, sir, who can serve, to serve. But I want to distance myself, sir, from those comments made by Senator Franklin earlier today. And to suggest, I have to distance, when you say things that are not true, I have to distance myself, but you can't have your own facts. Sir, I want to suggest that there is relevance for a military in today's environment. There is relevance for a defense force. Yes, what security looks like today is clearly different to, the 80s and 70s and so on. And it would be, I think, incumbent on us as legislators to work with the team, to work with our leaders in our defense force, to look to see what support we can give to help them now to have the apparatus they need, have the legislative framework they need, have the resources, have the trained personnel that they need now to be able to combat the new type of security challenges that are clearly on the horizon and have actually begun to affect us, and they've already started to come into this region. So, sir, with those few words, I support the amendment, and I remain obliged to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Dr. Holder. Senator McConney.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I really have to say that this was a very exciting and interesting debate in terms of the perspective shared. And Senator Holder, I really want to thank you for not just putting in historic context, but reminding us that there's a relevance for the Barbados Defense Force that has nothing to do with the past and the traditional theaters, which is air, sea, and land, but that there's also other dimensions that we must consider now, cyber, of course, being one, and, of course, from a health perspective, making sure that we are looking at the role of our defense and the protection of country at those non-traditional areas. And I thought I would share also that, even as we talk about relevance as it relates to health, do you know that the Barbados Defense Force has the only accredited Type 1 emergency field hospital, World Health Organization accredited field health hospital in the Caribbean region? And so we continue to see how some of the work that they are doing at this stage will continue to help us look at some of the other ways in which we have to look at security, and significantly so. Senator Adams, I want to thank you very much for schooling not just Senator Franklin, but this honorable chamber in the history of armies and the outsourcing of national defense versus those who choose to provide their own defense themselves. and for giving us some examples of ways in which those who have led armies, who have been older or would have been considered closer to the age that we are discussing as part of this particular bill, ways in which they have been able to use their age and their experience to be able to vanquish the enemy. And also looking at the defense force not simply as whether or not it is an investment that is doing what one senator said, it is not, I'm paraphrasing, not worth being kept around at this point in time. But you have made the point that it has to be part of our risk management strategy in terms of protecting the country. Senator Grant reminded us of the value of the discipline that is brought to us as a result of the work that the Barbados Defense Force has done with a number of young people and being able to direct them into productive work, not just looking at what the skills we can develop for soldiering, just as Senator Wiggins also said, but the skills that are for life and for a lifetime as well. Senator Greenidge looked at how we can just extend all around the whole notion that soldiers can contribute even at a more advanced stage than 55, and that we must look for doing it all around for all different ranks and titles within the service. Senator Nurse spoke about his belief that the circumstances of the Barbados Defense Force, such as it is now, really and truly is not so onerous on the physical, to create the physical stresses on the body that he believes, therefore, this is his belief, that countries, that indeed that we can increase that age because we don't have that onerous impact, physical impact, and the level of engagement of many other countries around the world in terms of war globally. Senator Hunt spoke about, and I thank him for his support for this bill in creating an ethos where we do not discard people simply because they have reached a particular age. And that continues to be a theme that has been echoed by a number of persons. Senator Wiggins, as I mentioned earlier, spoke about the training of soldiers and equipping them not only with skills for soldiering, but with for other skills as well. Now I get to Senator Franklin, who you have heard many of our other senators refer to his remarks. I wanted to speak specifically to one where he raised the point that he believes that this government is seeking to create an army in our own image. And I just want to remind Senator Franklin, I know that he knows this because he claims that he was once a member of the BDF. The Barbados Defense Force falls under the direction of the Governor General, not the Prime Minister. The Barbados, the Chief of Staff, acts under the direction of the Governor General, and the appointments are made by the Governor General acting on the advice of the Defense Board. So I would really wish to dispel any notion that there is any government acting without the proper authority to create some type of army. That is not so. It is simply not so. It is not the intention of these amendments. And I hope that those who were listening will understand that that could not be made possible, not based on the current rules by which this, the appointments are made and to whom the Chief of Staff and the Barbados Defense Force whose direction they would fall under. So, Mr. President, I believe that we have exhausted much of the debate on this matter, and I think that there is consensus that this amendment should indeed go through. I will allow the process to be able to bear that out, but certainly from the debates I have been hearing, I get that impression. And sir, it is with these few words that I beg to move that this bill now be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. The thing is, the ayes have it. Senator Pagani.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do not leave the chair, and the Honorable Senate resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
The question is that this bill be now read a third time. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Defense Amendment Act 2021.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be so cited. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Order number 4, sir.
Order number 4.
In the name of the acting leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Amendment Bill 2021.
Senator McConney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I seek to introduce this bill, I respectfully ask that this honorable chamber seek to address items 3, 4, and 5, which are the Governor General Conditions of Service Amendment Bill 2021, the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Amendment Bill 2021, and the Constitution Amendment Bill 2021, all as a cognate debate as they all relate to precisely the same matter.
Okay. The question is that these three matters so cited be dealt with as a cognate debate. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Senator McConney, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your indulgence. You know, Mr. President, as I introduce this cognate debate, I marvel at how many things we have taken for granted, certain practices that we assume were enshrined in law that indeed were not. I think, sir, that one would understandably take it for granted that the laws provide that the Governor General be legally entitled to paid annual vacation leave and to uncertified sick leave, like most other people. One would also, sir, take it for granted that the Prime Minister and ministers and parliamentary secretaries would also be entitled to the same. But, sir, according to the law, that is not necessarily so. The Holiday with Pay Act, sir, which was enacted in 1951, it was amended, sir, in 2017. It gave legal entitlement to annual holiday with pay for workers in Barbados and others. This is supported, sir, by the International Labour Organization's Holiday with Pay Convention, which was revised, I believe, back in 1970, and which entitled workers to the right, sir, to take paid vacation leave each year. Sir, the general orders of the Barbados Public Service provide for the entitlement of vacation and sick leave for all uncertified sick leave for public officers. And I believe it is the first schedule of those orders, sir, that speaks to the entitlement of public officers above that pay grade of Z11, which I believe is like your executive officer, they're about to 42 days vacation leave and 21 days uncertified sick leave annually. Casual workers too, sir, they have in that schedule some specification as to the number of vacation leave and days. Sir, in addition, the social protection for workers that are included in the social protection platform of the International Labour Organization, it supports paid sick leave. And the two components of that, sir, are leave from work due to sickness and cash benefits that replace the wage during the time of leave due to sickness. The rationale, sir, for that is that work should not threaten health and ill health should not lead to loss of income and work. And sir, I started laying out that background or painting that picture of the laws and the international conventions that support what it is we are seeking to do in these bills before us. And in light of all, sir, all of the above, sir, there still appears to be an anomalous situation where it's no legislation or significant legislation provides for annual holidays and sick leave for the public officials to whom I referred earlier. Currently, sir, such arrangements are on an ad hoc basis. After consultation with the Prime Minister, for example, some cabinet ministers may be able to get some holiday, and the parliamentary secretaries as well, and in the case of the Prime Minister, after consultation with the Governor General, again, that being a similar type of arrangement. And these types of looser type arrangements certainly place officials in these categories, such as the Governor General and the Prime Minister and the ministers and parliamentary secretaries. It places them at a distinct disadvantage to all other government officials. These three bills before this Honorable House, sir, seeks to do a few things. To establish the right of the Governor General, the Prime Minister, and other members of Cabinet and parliamentary secretaries to 4 weeks paid vacation leave annually. To provide a procedure for obtaining vacation leave. To provide the right to sick leave, and to provide for the appointment of persons to act temporarily when the substantive office holder is on leave. Sir, I'll get directly to some of the constitutional amendments and then explain some of them. Section 29 is the subject of one of the proposed amendments in this cognate of bills. And this section addresses matters concerning acting Governor General, where it currently says, whereas the office of the Governor General is vacant or the holder of the office is absent from Barbados, or for some other reason unable to perform the functions of the office, those functions shall be performed by, and it goes into further detail about persons who would be able to perform those functions. Sir, what we are seeking to do in this amendment is, and this is at 29.1, is to amend by inserting immediately after the word Barbados in that quote, which I just prepared, or is on vacation leave. What it does, it gives greater certainty to the vacation leave, and also allows a person to be acting, or we call it acting, but really performing the functions of the Governor General in such situation. Sir, it is section 67 as well of the Constitution. It says, whenever the Prime Minister is unable by reason of, in other words, illness or absence from Barbados, that is the point at which the Governor General may authorize that any other minister or member of the House of Assembly may perform the functions of the Prime Minister. Nowhere in there does it speak to being on vacation. It speaks of illness, or it speaks of being outside of the country. Now, similar is true for ministers and parliamentary secretaries as well, sir. And at this time of COVID and of where many people are not traveling, it limits the capacity of the Governor General and to be able to make such appointments, well, not appointments, to make the necessary arrangements for those functions to be carried out by others in the case of the Prime Minister, or in the case of ministers and parliamentary secretaries at the recommendation of the Prime Minister. It limits that because, according to the law, someone can only be put to, I would say, act or perform those functions if they're outside of the country. Many people are not traveling in COVID at this time, but that does not mean that they should be robbed of the opportunity to have a vacation, because bottom line is, as long as you carry the title Prime Minister or Minister, etc., as long as you are within the territory of Barbados, land, I believe it is land and air and sea, you cannot have another person acting in that same position. So you can't have two ministers, you can't have two, and therefore it is necessary that we make the amendments that we now are able, one, that vacation leave is actually enshrined in the law, two, that they can be paid sick leave, uncertified sick leave, and three, that you can have someone act even when these officials are not outside of the country. And so, sir, I believe I have outlined the rationale and the supportive background in the law and in international relations of this matter. I've outlined the substantive amendments that are proposed to 29, 68, and 67 of sections of the Constitution. And I know, sir, that you are aware that many studies abound, and the scientists, neuroscientists, and others agree, as well as the psychologists, that indeed vacation is something that is important for people's mental health, for their physical health, for their quality of sleep, and that there are multiple benefits all around for the provision of vacation and others. We believe it is also quite humane. Indeed, I hear, Mr. President, I see that there are a number of senators in here who believe they have not had enough vacation themselves. But, sir, I believe, therefore, from them we will receive much empathy for this type of legislation. And, sir, it is with these few words that I beg to move that these bills, I will do them one by one, that
No, this bill, order number 4, we did it.
that order number 4, the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Amendment Bill 2021 be read a second time.
Senator Franklin. Thank you, Senator McConnell. Senator Franklin.
Thank you very much, sir, for this opportunity. And again, sir, it won't be long. I well remember when I was a personal assistant to a Barbados Labour Party minister. My minister got ill, had dengue fever. And while he was performing the functions of his duty, no one can help, and Senator Kwali is quite right, nobody else can perform those duties unless that minister has been removed for the time being or is out of the island. You only have one Minister of Foreign Affairs, don't mind you got two. You can only have one Minister of Finance, don't mind you got three, and call him Minister in the ministry, which does not exist in law. It only exists when the Minister of State doesn't check the Constitution. Constitution only provides for a parliamentary secretary to assist the minister. But you have it. Anyhow, I started thinking about this aspect of the role of a minister, and back then, when I was a personal assistant, because he had dengue fever and he had to be there, still signing orders, still signing deportation orders or whatever else that came across his desk, because nobody else could perform those functions. And this was a very easy fix. You know, not all this amending the Constitution, all kind of stuff. You know, it's an easy fix. But this is a rush to do something and get it wrong every time. You know, because you didn't change enough things in order to accomplish this. But what offends me though is that this bill is being debated today, and the Prime Minister announced yesterday that she's going to be on vacation sometime. But there, who tells you they can pass? You know, that's the problem I have. You have no reverence for the process. You just rush out there and do things without observing the niceties. You know, and I have a difficulty where you just get up and make pronouncements. I'm going to be on vacation, but there's no such thing up to today as vacation for the Prime Minister. You know? But people might say it's not a big point, but it shows that you got to have respect for the process. But let me go on. The easy way to do this, if a minister wants vacation, he can't travel, is to revoke his appointment for the duration of the period. And you can then have a minister, you would have him as being a member of parliament, but he will not be a minister, and he can get his vacation. That is the easy fix. You know, you don't have to go and come up with all these elaborate things. You just, and people get their appointments revoked every so often. And for instance, if the Prime Minister travels, when the Minister of, when the Attorney General was like number 2, you can't be Attorney General and Prime Minister at the same time, so the Attorney General's appointment was revoked. So it is not a big thing. It happens all the time, especially in the last, the Barbados Labour Party administration, when Sir David Simmons, David Simmons, no, Sir David, when he was Attorney General, he acted as Prime Minister. His appointment was revoked every time he acted as Prime Minister. He acted. So then the Prime Minister just revoked the thing, you know. Because you're not fixing the problem, you are compounding it. Like for instance, the reason why you don't have paid vacations, because you get paid for 12 months a year. So if you don't need a paid vacation because they're in the 13th month. If you want to be on vacation as a minister, then it will be without pay. Simply because you are self-employed. Yeah. Minister, Governor General, Speaker of the House, Deputy Speaker, Ministers, Parliamentary Secretaries, Leader of the Opposition, Chairman of Committees, members of the House of Assembly, and members of the Senate are self-employed. Don't shoot the messenger. That is in accordance with let me just find it for you quickly. The second schedule, rather, to the National Insurance and Social Security Classification Regulations 1967. So there are self-employed ministers. So self-employed people don't get the vacation unless you take a vacation and you don't get paid. So you can't get it both ways. You can't remain being self-employed. So you gotta fix that. Sometimes you don't fix everything. And I'm sure you should have been aware of this, but this was a rush job again. You are self-employed. If you are self-employed, you don't get a salary when you go on vacation. You got to pay yourself when you're off. So we should now be also, in order to make these things effective, you should be amending the National Insurance and Social Security Classification Regulations 1967. See, I also was I'm a clerical officer in the National Insurance Department. And so that is how, when they saw this thing, they said, well, we had to change the National Insurance Regulations, and they tell nobody, but then they didn't see an order or anything to make this effective. So that is, see, do these things and do it right. You are self-employed. Don't blame it. And you get all the benefits of self-employment, and then you also can get the pros and the cons, the benefits and the things that are not so beneficial. But you got rest on one. You can't straddle and be in both camps at the same time. You can't be self-employed and an employee at the same time unless you have two jobs. And the minister is only allowed to have one. Mind you, we know better. Okay, so I think that is the position that the government should have taken, rather than go through all this. So are you going to be given holidays with pay? Yes. Then you're not self-employed. Fix that. But I see. Oh yes, Senator McConaughey was speaking about, and I had to touch this. She said that ministers don't get vacation, but the most ministers were on vacation since May 2018. I don't see any work coming out of them. But a few exceptions. So you get them 3 years vacation already. Don't make many hands like work, but I don't see them put the hands to the plow. That didn't happen, you know. I have seen, when I used to watch the briefings, the Prime Minister fielding almost every question, Senator Walcott and Senator, Senator, Minister Bostick, and I know we have the new high flyer who gets into everything, whether she herself she's talking about it or not. No, I'm not speaking about me, I'm talking about Senator Cummings. You're getting me mixed up. And so outside of those few people, nothing happens. So you're always on vacation. So they're not working. You are not working. The cabinet could do with a severe cut in the reduction, in the numbers that they have. You know, I always said there should be 10. The Prime Minister herself said 12. No, but she said that when she was saying that Barbados, the size of Barbados was such that it only need. I taught her yesterday, not this morning. You're back in the person that you promised me don't talk. We talk. You really feel that I'm a member of the government, broad government, leading opposition? No, the government is all of us. And I have a query or a problem and that only the Prime Minister can deal with, and you can think I can call you? Well, we are not enemies. We are not enemies. I just don't let the nonsense that she does. I'll rephrase that, sir.
Please.
I just don't like some of her actions. And when she makes certain actions, I speak about them. But that doesn't mean because she do it, I can hear them till the next time she do something right. No. She can do something wrong today, I'll call her on it, and then tomorrow we'll speak with her. So I don't know what you worry about, because. So I don't know what you worry about. I don't hate. I don't have any time. Right? So, the one thing she called, we spoke. You ask me a question, when you answer, you know you want me to answer? We're not enemies, sir. I have one enemy, and you know what that is. you want me to sit down there, you call the name, because I can call it there.
Please press on, sir.
Yes, sir, thank you. So my next query is, the one dealing with the Governor General, where the Governor General will be provided with an alternate accommodation befitting her status, if she's on vacation in Barbados. Do you really need that? No, I when I go on vacation, I don't leave my house, I don't leave my house. So you mean to tell me you're going to... No. I says COVID and left. Snow stays with me. Since COVID, I've stayed here. I've always been here now. But so the Governor General stays in Barbados on her vacation, and she got left she home. That doesn't make sense to me. Because an acting Governor General only one office. You ain't gonna live up there. You gotta change the curtains and the bed sheets and other kind of stuff in case the Governor General go on 2 weeks vacation. This does not make sense. So I think you better review. It says where the Governor General wishes to spend his vacation leave within Barbados, he is entitled to the payment of accommodation for himself, his spouse, and eligible children at such rates as befit the office. Well, mind you, something like this now is too up in the air here before we got to be related to something. Because befitting the office of General Secretary of Unity, that said that's only worth $100. It is registered. Yes, number 54. Right? I didn't pay. So what is this rate? I know if you look into the general laws, there's a rate for people traveling and stuff. So you need to specify this. You just don't leave this up here with theory. You're putting it in primary legislation. So if you can put it in primary legislation, then you have to spell it out. But I still don't understand why you need to spell it out, simply because if I decided taking a couple of days off, I'm not leaving home. Right? So, as I said, I'm going to be quick, but I just want you to realize that the amendments were unnecessary, that you could continue doing your job and doing it effectively by just revoking the appointments for the amount of days the minister wants off, but then you wouldn't be paid. But you remain as a self-employed person under the national insurance regulations, so you should still not be paid when you go on vacations. So you have to do something about that. Right? You're fixing things I don't understand. You see, they tell you, if something ain't broke, don't fix it. This thing was not broken, and you're attempting to fix it. There was absolutely no need for these changes. Just do what was expected of you, leave the island, or revoke your appointment for the couple of weeks that you want out vacation. And you'll get reappointed next time. Unless some of you guys frightened that if the Prime Minister will revoke, you might not remember to turn it back on. You know? This is unnecessary, and it's a waste of parliamentary time to bring this bill with all and give people the impression that something that Senator talking about the Holidays with Pay Convention. I know that well, and the Holidays with Pay Convention. I didn't raise to say she was misleading the House. This is the second time for the day, but I was tempted to do that, but I kept quiet. Because you said earlier in the last one that the Prime Minister does not control the defense force, which is also not true. But Section 9 of the Defense Act, you will see. Prime Minister has the power. But the Holidays with Pay Act 1951 was repealed and replaced by the Holidays with Pay Act 2017. And all that really did was to take the Barbados Labour Party out of granting it and making it look as though it was them or the Dems, because they didn't do very much to the act. They just made some minor amendments, but rather than make a minor amendment to the bill, they just do over the whole thing, right, about almost everything that was already there, and call it theirs. So so it didn't change anything in the Holidays with Pay Act, and it did not give you, as a self-employed person, the right to holidays with pay. So it wasn't really relevant for the purposes that you were seeking to give it, but that's probably your brief. And the person who wrote the brief for you should have come and get some information that would have helped them. But then again, I would have persuaded you not to come with this bill. Sir, fix these things. I know they don't bring back anything, Ben Caswell talk, but they've got to fix that. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Franklin. Senator Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good evening to all colleagues of this House. Sir, the debate which we are having, which comes at this time, and actually, Mr. President, I'm going to ask for a short segue in relation to certain statements made by members of the House when we were debating the other bill. Just a short line. And I would say, sir, it may not have been known to many in here, but I've spent a few years in Trinidad. It may not be known, sir. And sir, no one thought that you needed a serious army until July 27th, 1990. That's all I wish to say about that debate. I didn't think it was worthwhile for me to raise that just to get up for that purpose during that discussion. So forgive my indulgence, sir. Sir, the cognitive debate, as stipulated, sets out what appears at first blush to be a rather decent proposal with regard to providing for the embodiment of customs and practice with regard to leave for senior members of Parliament, as well as for the highest office holder in this land and the Prime Minister. And sir, certainly it is one which the objective, as laid out, is in line with previous legislation passed within this country. And whenever we have a debate, sir, which touches on the Constitution, I find myself moved to get involved, being that we regard the document, despite certain naysayers, with a certain amount of seriousness. So, sir, in terms of the legislation before us, and I'll start with Chapter 6, which speaks to the Head of State's condition of services. See, I'm trying to get accustomed to the lingo. Well, let's call it the proper title, the Governor General Conditions of Services, sir. This piece of legislation was amended 16 times since 1971. 5 acts and 11 statutory instruments, sir. Now, to me, that represents, from a legal perspective, the clearest evidence of course, the subject of a representative of the head of state to the rigors of Parliament. Parliament itself has its own checks and balances. And at the end of the day, this arm is subject to the regulation of the courts. And we have seen that play out recently, sir. So is this delicate balance of governance which tends to attract and incite debate. And this is what you want in a democracy. We should have constructive dialogue. We should have bipartisan comments. We should have critiques. And we should have, as vaulted, consultation. But at the end of the day, there will be governance. So when we see this type of legislation, sir, I think it's time that we look at what the changes are and have a rigorous discussion to see how it goes forward for what we say is the best interest of Barbados. Let's not focus on our present self, but lean towards our future selves. And you've heard me in here, sir, I tend to wax poetically and almost philosophically with regards to the duality. But I believe it's important when we consider, when we pass these pieces of legislation, that we focus not only on the needs presently, but on what may come and prepare ourselves for the eventualities. No, we can't, Mr. President, future-proof ourselves against all the wide ranges of what tomorrow may bring. But certainly with the benefit of history, we can get some guidance as to how we take ourselves forward. And I say all that to say, sir, that we have come a long state. That was a play on words. Let me repeat that, my apologies. We have come a long way, sir, as a nation. This state of thing. When Governor Generals used to arrive from England, sir, bit of a history lesson, they used to be greeted by the plantocracy, as it then was, and feted in the Governor General's mansions with gifts and regalia and pomp and ceremony. And sir, invariably, depending on how things would go, the planters may have to send a message up to good old England to replace the Governor General, who may or may not have been behaving in a certain way. That was the power at the time of the crown and the prerogative. That power, sir, through our independence, now manifests itself within the Parliament. That power is subject to the people, that power is subject to the courts. With regard to the function of a head of state, who we recognize, however, what has not changed is the recognition which we say as a society we give to the office. And what prides me the most in this country is that in Barbados, despite our disputes, I like that one, despite our disputes, we recognize the officer.
It's good alliteration.
Yes, sir, thank you. We recognize the office and we respect the office. Say what you want about the individual, but we respect the office. And I believe, sir, that we have seen many instances where when you start to erode on that, you start to erode on how things are done, how things are conducted, you see the knock-on effect in the society. And I say all this to say, sir, that detractors may come out and say, well, why are we doing these changes if there is going to be a change into a republic in November? Sir, someone once said, I can't remember, I believe it's a common local quip, that a week is a long time in politics. So 3 to 4 weeks may be infinity. But what we have to do is to take the steps that we can to see how we can future-proof and make determination as to what the recommendations are going forward for these offices. Now, sir, the statements which have been made are that subject is the Ford Commission, sir, which we have the report of the Constitutional Review Commission, which I believe is subject to minor change, is what we will be discussing, sir, coming down the line. According to this report, sir, at page 98G, the present holder of the Governor General's office is supposed to be the person with regard to the future head of state function. So if we're having this debate in this context, we should be given consideration with regard to the future if this is as stated to be the basis on which we'll be going forward. Parliament should not be acting in vain. Parliament should not be acting knee-jerkly in terms of its reaction. So I do not believe when certain senators say that these provisions are done for a certain basis, that is a correct statement. This is obviously an attempt, sir, to provide for the future and to provide a mechanism by which those members who work, and I may know 1 or 2 present, and I may have known some in the past, sir, where they were not allowed to benefit from certain holiday periods. So certainly that is to be commended. The only issue that I have, sir, based on the history that I just said, based on the recognition of the office, is that we have a scenario in which the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, and I believe I could use the reference to she, I believe that our Prime Minister is egalitarian like myself. But why is it that the same period which the Prime Minister has in terms of leave of 4 weeks is what is prescribed for other ministers? Not saying they all don't work as hard, but we have seen the pressure in which the Prime Minister has been placed. Should it be the same? Should it be also less than senior public servants who get 6 weeks or whatever it is and get to carry on? So when I bring this all together, and then of course we have the Governor General, who is again given the same 4-week period. So when we bring it together, sir, and we marshal it in terms of our recognition, in terms of the office and the consideration, while I support it, and I recognize that it attempts to improve on what is convention and vest custom in legislation, should it be that we are drawing the equality line amongst our head of state, our Prime Minister, and the ministers? That's my contribution, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Boyce. Senator Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too have a brief contribution to make on the discussion of these 3 bills set out for our consideration in the manner described and agreed to before. The treatment of vacation is something which has been known to engage the minds of people with that falling as part of their administrative responsibility. I can recall much confusion and a lot of debate and, quite frankly, a lot of quarreling and disagreement when we in Barbados operated in the private sector dealing with the Holiday with Pay Act, 1951, Senator Franklin is saying. I noted when the Attorney General led the discussion of this same matter in the lower house that he referred to a number of things in employment relations having been taken for granted, such as that you would take for granted that a prime minister or ministers, the governor general, would be entitled to vacation leave, because the entitlement to vacation leave, or perhaps we should say the eligibility for vacation leave, forms part of the employment landscape, certainly of Barbados. But there are some things that were taken for granted, which were then described as oversights. There are some oversights that need to be corrected. And when he said that, it resonated with me, because I was reminded that for years, many of us fought with employers about the interpretation of Section 3, subsection 9 of the 1951 Holiday Pay Act. That section dealt with when a public holiday falls within the vacation period of an employee, what should happen. There wasn't any argument that the vacation, if one public holiday fell within that vacation period, that the vacation would be extended by a day. But too often, employers would say that the law as it was indicated clearly that the period of the holiday shall be increased by 1 day in respect of that public holiday, and that the law did not say that it shall be increased by 1 day in respect of that public holiday with pay. And although it was argued by people pursuing the interests of those aggrieved employees, although it was argued that it's the Holiday with Pay Act, isn't it common sense then that one would expect the person to be paid? Those who pushed back said if that was the intention, Parliament would have made that evident in the wording of the legislation. I think that underscores the importance of legislation which passes through Parliament being adequately descriptive of the intention of Parliament. It should not be that in resolving conflict centered around the correct interpretation of rights, that courts should have to be resorting to Hansard, taking a pepper and heart approach to figure out what were those people thinking when they were passing the legislation that is drafted in this way, the way that the judges would have in front of them, scratching their heads about. I take Senator Boyce's point. Well, it's a question, a consideration he's challenged us to turn over in our minds, having to do with the quality of vacation entitlement, which we should have considered when thinking about how to treat the eligibility of the Prime Minister, ministers, parliamentary secretaries, and the Governor General. Is it equitable when one looks at the weight of responsibility that the vacation entitlement should be the same? We have been presented with an opportunity to modernize the approach of how we manage vacation entitlement. And I think that we have missed an opportunity if all that we do is to pass these bills as drafted, rather than having applied an approach that shows we recognize that the level of responsibility, the level of effort exerted by persons who work should be reflective of the extent of their sacrifice. I think it would be reasonable to assume that these three bills, having come to Parliament at the same time to be considered in this manner, that somebody should have looked at them together. Right? I would commend the level of clarity that is evident in the bill that would amend the Governor General Conditions of Service Act, Section 14A1, where it says that the Governor General is entitled to 4 weeks vacation leave annually. It is clear how much vacation leave and on what periodic basis we are saying the Governor General should be entitled to this. When, however, we look at the bill, the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Act, the section provided, Section 4A1, it says that the holder of an office set up in column 1 of the schedule is entitled to 4 weeks paid vacation leave annually for every complete year of service. Now, if the intention is to treat the vacation entitlement of those office holders referred to at column 1 of the schedule in a manner identical to how Section 14A1 sets out the vacation entitlement of the Governor General by the Governor General Conditions of Service Act, then it would have been sufficient to end this after the word annually, to end Section 4A1 of the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Act. The additional language for every complete year of service. Now, when we look at who is likely to be picking up this document to know how to do their job, law should be written that anybody, that is not only the initiated, the learned, but that anybody can read and understand what their rights and what their responsibilities are according to the law. As drafted, I think there's some potential for confusion about what the intentions were or are. I do not want my government to be subject to finger pointing of persons who may want to impugn that. Look, these people, like they were trying to give themselves way, way more vacation than they should get. Because the way Section 4A1 reads, it is so it's so reflective of the character of, say, Schedule 1 of the Severance Payment Act, that when you see 4 weeks paid vacation leave annually for every complete year of service, it makes you wonder, so are they saying that if you've had 2 complete years of service, you multiply the 4 weeks by 2? Right? Is that what you're saying? Is that not a reasonable misinterpretation of this section as drafted? So my suggestion relative to this, Mr. President, would be that we consider placing a full stop after the word annually in section 4A1 of the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Bill. The treatment of holidays is an area which we take for granted, especially when persons are in positions of leadership, positions of authority. This is a small society, and I've come to learn that once you occupy a position that causes people to see your face and hear your voice and recognize you, they expect a lot from you. And expecting a lot from you, they put a lot of weight on your shoulders. I can recall being at a relative's funeral, and somebody walked up to me and said, I know this isn't the time, but, you know? And over the years, I've come to realize that in order to have a true vacation that allows me to recharge and to be able to pick up my professional duties with clarity and a certain amount of vigor, you have to consider leaving the country or doing as Senator Franklin says and locking yourself at home. Right? But in general terms, sir, I applaud the spirit of the effort being made by government. I am supportive of it, and I would just wish for those considerations that I have suggested not to be discarded. I'm obliged to you.
Thank you very much, Senator Hunt. Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this afternoon, I'm going to be more seeking clarity than objecting to anything, and making some suggestions, as I tend to do when new legislation is produced and provided for our approval. We have been presented with a number of bills which seek, using various language of my colleagues, to rectify a situation that exists as it relates to the Governor General, ministers, and parliamentary secretaries. And I agree that these things need to be addressed. Back in 2018, Mr. President, when the Senate was asked to look at certain emoluments, allowances, my words, that might not be the accurate word. I said then, and I maintain this position, that those who govern Barbados, that is to say, ministers of government, parliamentary secretaries, and by extension, senators, are not paid properly. I said then, and I maintain my position now. And I think back then, and Senators McConney, Cummings, Walker, everybody who was here then, back then in the early days, may recall that I said, because it was around the time we were discussing allowances and remuneration around the time that was leading into a new school term. So we had heard persons from the other place talking about the fact that their salary was expected to stretch not only within their households, but with their constituents. It is something that happens in Barbados. Whether it is fed by politicians or it is just an assumption by the people, you expect that if you hit hard times, your representative, you put them there, they are to help you. I'm a child of a politician. It is understood. I will not get a pair of jeans, but the constituents will get their glasses, their school uniform, the fridge. It's a done thing. It's a way of life. It's accepted. I said then, and I'm saying it now, we do not flinch when we hear that a CEO is making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. There's an erroneous perception that our governors, meaning our ministers and the persons who govern, make a wash of money. That's relative. I don't think they're paid enough for the work that they're called upon to do. We get caught up that we are a small island and we are not the United States, we're not Canada, we're not the UK, so we don't have access to funds. Not one of the government people will come here and say what I am saying today, because it's not done. Government does not come and ask for increase, and I'm not in any way trying to be disrespectful, but they are not the ones who are going to say we need a raise. You can't talk about a raise in the middle of a pandemic. You can't talk about a raise. Back then it was what? We were about to do BERT. BERT? What is BERT or? So government persons will not ask for an increase. We are not supposed to encourage an environment. We are supposed to be integrity. We're supposed to promote integrity, and we're supposed to promote transparency is the word I was looking for. Corruption is a word that is used a lot in an environment when you're discussing government, parliament, persons who are politicians, and that kind of thing. The fastest thing that people will say is, who carry away money? Who getting a cut off of this deal? Who getting money under the table? And then we have evidence that it happens. Unfortunately, the real is that it happens. It is my belief that we have to stop disrespecting the persons who make the sacrifice to run the country. Mr. President, governance has a cost. We cannot continue to put our ministers, our parliamentary secretaries, and I dare say, our very hardworking, bills with 100 pages, senators. Nobody in here, and I remember it was Senator Cummings who said it back in the day. No, she ain't coming here for the money. You said it. I wrote it down. She said, I ain't coming here for the money. But now she got big roles, so she can't carry that no further. So I can help Senator Cummings today. We need to be respected. there needs to be a reality check. Because there is nobody who follows what goes on in this Senate, be it session 1 or session 2, that could say that we are here making sport. They can't say we're sleeping. They can't say we're not paying attention. They can't say that we're not reading. Because I could tell you now, one of the House of Assemblies and one of these bills go on an E and not a Y. But I got to change it. I see it because I'm reading. I'm just saying. And the word of is missing from another section, so it don't flow. I'm going to help you, Mr. President. I'm going to say it because that's why I'm here. I was put here by the Governor General, the Vice Regent, the head of state, who on our table of precedence, as I understand it, is number 1. But it is not a joke. Contrary to popular belief by some persons who should know better, her role is not ceremonial. She's do things for real. It is not only meeting with centenarians. She has to assent to bills no matter what time the Clerk of Parliament send it to Government House to sign, because you know how y'all just get on. Y'all just bring it today for tomorrow. I don't want anybody interfering with me later on. So you get it signed, you get it passed. Like defense today. Rumor has it that got to be ready for August. So we wrap it up on the 28th of July. It's all good. We ain't had a problem with the bill. And it was short, so they had no room for the amount of mistakes that sometimes you find. Mind you, they're not quite complete. Man, I'm quarreling, Mr. President. I just making some observations. Back on track. You cannot put these people to go and sit down at social partnership meetings and the man sitting inside of them making 4 times the money. They're what's the word they're looking for? Dr. Holder, come. Their perspectives, thanks very much. People will feel you tell me so, but I'm going with that. Their perspectives are going to be, the mental, yes, will be different. They're going to be different. And there's some people who will think that the minister's salary is a lot of money. And for some people, it is. But for real, for what they have to do, look, Senator McConnell got about the Ministry of Information Science Technology, land tax, bruh. Everything that got in a computer, you just feel to call Senator McConnell. Senator Cummings, make sure and tell we, Lord, I don't know if it's we or if it's TV, because you know. But you got to say tourism and international transit. We cannot leave it out. But each ministry has enough going on. We know in 2021, July 28th, working out vacation for them. How could we now be working out vacation for? And you know what? Let me tell you what's gonna happen. They ain't gonna know how to write the letter to the Prime Minister ask for the vacation neither. Because they're gonna feel horrible. I can't. Mind you, they will not have a problem. They got 30 of them. Plus. So you got people to act, at least. It can happen. Take your vacation. Don't burn out. Don't burn out. Following on from Senator Hunt, though. You don't want to tell me how to speak? That never happened before, Mr. President. I'm being harassed from this side.
I will protect you.
Thank you. Senator Hunt raised something, and I would like somebody to explain it to me because, and I didn't plan to talk about this, but this one here in the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Act, the amendment, the bill, at the clause 4A, subclause 1, where it speaks to the holder of an office set out in column 1 of the schedule, is entitled to 4 weeks paid vacation leave annual for every complete year of service. Mr. President, with all due respect and from the bottom of my heart, What does that mean? Which term? Because if we're dealing with Senator Cummings, she can't go for vacation. You do a year yet? She could barely go get the little 4 weeks. Barely. Senator McCartney, I feel she could get, well, no, we changed the Constitution. Yeah, she could get hers. But what I want to know is somebody like the Attorney General who has been in Parliament from the year dot. What happens to him? Do we count back? Are we talking terms? Are we talking years of service? What does this mean? When we bring bills, they need to be clear. What does it mean? Which term? For all the years of service, and not for all intents and purposes, he has been in Parliament and the Prime Minister. She talks about a life in politics that is in the 30 years. So 30 times 4, 120 weeks. How much years that is that the Prime Minister entitled? What does it mean? I am not a public servant. I do not know how to read public servant lingo. But what does it mean? And on that note, why are we giving our governors 4 weeks when they got some people in the public service that get 6 and 8? What is happening? Why we always get on like we cannot treat our people who do the work properly? I'm just asking. When I was making the point about the senators, keeping it very real, Mr. President, how are you looking at senators who do the magnitude of work that we do? And you are paying them an allowance of $1,400 and how much? $79.07, Mr. President. I'm not going to not tell you about the 7 cents. The 7 cents is critical. Nobody is here, I'm going to keep saying, Senator Cummings, nobody's here for the money. We are serving our country. There's no dispute. We come, we work, we discuss, we debate, we pay attention the best we can when we get proper notice, not 2 days in front. And where is the challenge? Because, you know, the rest of the world thinks we loaded. And the senators loaded, oh my goodness, the ministers licking down with money. And it's not the vulgarity of money. It is respecting people's time, their commitment, and their expertise. There is nowhere else that we will get the stories like Senator Greenidge. Senator Greenidge, this morning he talked about a student, 56, 65. It is a collection of expertise and dedicated persons who are committed to the cause. Be fixing. I'm saying we need to do some more fixing. This is what I'm saying, and this is what I'm going to say. Before we move on, though, Mr. President, I'm wondering what is the position with the senators being provided with the legislation to which the amendments apply. We continue to get bills that make reference to a principal act, sections in a principal act, sections in the Constitution. I think we were all given the Constitution when we were invited to come and not be trained to work in the Senate. But we have been given, yes, we've been given. But we get these bills somewhat in a vacuum. And then you are asked to consider the content without having the whole picture. Now, if you are fortunate to work in an environment where the laws of Barbados are part of your work, you don't suffer. But you cannot reasonably continue to ask people to speak to amendments without giving them access to the principal act, Mr. President. We are going into our 3rd or 4th year We still have not had access to laws of Barbados. Could we do something about it as soon as possible? Now I know we're going to hear that we have to get ready for major amendments because, according to Prime Minister, things are going to change in another minute or two. But until that time happens, we need to get real with what we're being asked to do, because you know what, Mr. President, that speaks to my point even more. We are now working in an environment that makes it harder for us to produce, but we're still producing. We are using whatever means necessary to ensure that this chamber has robust, substantive, substantial debate. And we must be given the tools to get the job done properly. And if I didn't make it clear, Mr. President, I really would like clarity on Clause 4A, Subclause 1 of the proposed bill with remuneration, dealing with the ministers and parliamentary secretaries. It for each year of service is too vague. To my mind, it needs to be specific, or you're going to have a situation where some people are genuinely entitled to probably years of vacation. Unless I don't get it, and if I'm wrong, I'd be happy for clarification. Okay. Mr. President, I'm going to focus my concerns at this point on our heads of state. Now, Mr. President, I have always been saying, even before you joined us in these chambers, that the way that we make amendments is not conducive to the smooth running of a legal environment, because we do it in pieces, chop, chop. So you can end up having a piece of legislation that is amendment number 1, amendment 2021, number 2, amendment 2021, number 3, and by the time you get to 6, 7, 8, you don't know what the law is, because you have to be matching these amendments together to know what the position is. I'm told of a story where lawyers will go before none other than the Court of Appeal, argue a point, vociferously, if that's the word, with enough flair and talk, for the judge to wait for them to finish, and that's it. You know that's a repeal though, right? Now, there's nothing worse than a judge doing you that on your feet in front of your client. And we are pushing out laws so quickly, there's really no time for it to get into the consolidated index for you to go and check, you know. You can't check, because there's not enough time to get it documented before another one is happening. That's not a criticism, that's just a reality. But what I'm saying is, perhaps the government can find ways of looking at things holistically rather than dealing with a particular issue at a particular time, so that where possible we can reduce the number of amendments that we're called upon to address. So in that context, Mr. President, and please don't let it be confused, as I speak about the remuneration, I am serious. The government needs to review the remuneration for ministers, parliamentary secretaries, and senators. Because the reality is, particularly as I speak as a senator, not a bill can pass in Barbados without this House. Not without this House. And even if one argues that the government can say yes to whatever happened in the lower house, they still need to be present for there to be a quorum, for there to be a yes. So they have to come. Everything has value. We have to stop being apologetic about our worth. We have to stop pandering to this notion that because the government get put there, they got to take whatever is happening in an environment where persons are getting 10 times their salary. And again, it's not the money, but that's how we measure our worth. So let's put some value on our governance and stop getting on like there's something wrong with asking for our people to be looked after properly. And to be quite frank, if somebody is being paid properly, there's no possibility or temptation for corruption. It reduces the temptation for corruption unless you are just a licorice, greedy individual, in which case you leave sending along from where you come from anyhow. Keeping it very real, Mr. Mr. President, I can keep it real. Now, we have bills today that are doing this really great thing, giving these people that sometimes go from meeting to meeting at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then still got to be at a meeting for 8 o'clock. I was overhearing them speaking. And, we're giving them 4 weeks vacation. I think that needs to be reviewed, as I said. My question, though, in the context of doing amendments holistically, when we have people like a prime minister and a governor general, Mr. President, and they demit office, what are we doing with them? What happens to them? In the case of the prime minister, as far as I know, she has a slew of staff, a driver, a personal assistant, the security guy, and people that don't wear a uniform when she is present. Similar for the governor general. Whenever she demits office, what happens to her? What is the expectation? Is she supposed to go back to an ordinary citizen? And realistically, what about the governor general? Now, this particular governor general that we have, before she was governor general, she was a Court of Appeal judge. Let us say that she was at an age where she could be a Court of Appeal or judge again. That's the expectation? Can't be. There's staff. There's an aide de camp. There's a driver. There's security. There's a structure whereby, as much as she is no longer anonymous, she cannot get in a car and drive to the roundabout at the bottom of the hill without a couple of people being fired along the way at least. So what are we doing with our heads of state? We have the governor general, we have the prime minister. We have a situation where, and I pray that the prime minister understands what I'm about to do. It's not meant to be disrespectful. I'm a child of a politician where both parents died and were buried in public. One more public than the other, because one was an official funeral. So you know what that meant, Mr. President? That meant that when my father passed away in February, we had to wait till March to bury him because he died a week before the election. The party that he is associated with won the election, extended the honor, privilege, whatever the word is, Dr. Holder help me, of an official funeral. So you had to give the government an opportunity to put a government in place. When I tell you my father died the 15th of February, my father was buried on the 9th of March. He was the politician. He was the public servant. All he had to do the funeral. When he was sick and in hospital, when the newspaper saw it fit, Mr. President, to put that he was in the hospital, that wasn't bad enough. They put the ward. They put the ward and the number, Mr. President, and then tell me people want to know. But I can't say what I said to the editor in this house. But suffice it to say, said, you tell the people, but you don't tell them the word. How dare you? My mother came home in a coffin on a plane. We were in the VIP lounge, Mr. President. Please understand what I'm telling you. Who did I say? My mother. We were in the VIP lounge because my father was a minister of government. He had some of his colleague friends with him who were in there crying. I was with my brother. My sister wasn't here. Me, my father. Mr. President, we hear a knock at the door. Mr. President, we heard a knock on the door. Knock, knock. I went to the door. But I had a father that felt me. Because when I opened the door, it was the press. Who did I say just came home on a cough? I saw her coming on the conveyor belt in a casket. Press on the one statement. I'm not going to lie to you. I did store for truth. I would never forget. I stepped back. Took a deep breath. I heard, Mom. My father stopped me. I was going to tell them. I was going to give them a statement. Can't say what I was going to say. I'm saying all this for a reason. I'm leading up to something. You know, Mr. President, we have a Prime Minister of Barbados, who, by the way, Mr. Boyce went to Queen's College. I just want to put out there. But, Mr. McCartney, who lost her brother, a lovely gentleman, Nafan, may he rest in peace. He passes away, and we still seeing the Prime Minister on TV and at meetings and doing Elsa and visiting people. You understand? And then our Prime Minister, Mr. President, take a day to go for a swim with a, what do you call the thing? This thing that is, how much? Speed Bob. And we make that goes viral on social media. And then we have people quarreling that she did that and did not go to a function that her capable Minister of Home Affairs looked after. It is called, Mr. President, the word is sacrifice. Public servants who are doing it for real, sacrifice. The Governor General can't go and look for a friend that is in the hospital without it being, it cannot happen. She can go, but she can't go. She can go, but this is what can happen. And I am quarreling because she's the head of state. Nothing is to happen to her. She cannot get in her car and go and look for her friend in the hospital. Her aide-de-camp is going to go. Special branch is going to go. And when she get to the hospital, and don't try and go to the hospital, don't tell them she coming, that's foolishness. The senior nursing officer on duty is going to walk her to whichever ward she's going to, as it should be. But what it means is, she's not anonymous. We have governor generals who do not vote in the general elections because the governor general is the head of state. Therefore, they give up the right not to vote, contrary to popular belief. And you know, Mr. President, when I say certain things, I say certain things. If we have people who are making these sacrifices, pay them properly, give them proper vacation, and when they demit office, could dare, Mr. President, at least give them a car, a driver, and some form of personal assistant. It cannot be that you not recognize, and don't tell me about the pension, because a pension from small money is still a small pension. No. You cannot have a Governor General who demits office to what? To what? To you just pack, and in her case, we can pack for days. Y'all see how she steps out. It can be a long time packing, and then that's it. She's to ride off into the sunset. We are supposed to be punching above our weight, and I am insisting, and I am saying, and I am demanding. We have to stop treating our own like they don't matter. Let me tell y'all something. When I was chairman of the NCF, and we had overseas artists coming. Oh my goodness! First thing first, they ain't coming until you pay half their money in US dollars. They ain't coming. You gotta pay them first. When they reach, before they sing a note, you gotta pay them the rest in US dollars. And then we have to change, for some, the toilet seat where they're gonna be. We have to give them special food, special drink. And the tea for one of them had to be at a particular temperature. But we're doing it, you know. We're doing it. Because they're foreign. We want them. But I'm going to bet you that what I'm saying here, there will be people who take what I say out of context and make it something that it is not. We have to look after our own. We have to mind our people. We have to stop getting on like we are. There's something wrong with making sure that our people want to get up and go to work. You cannot let people leave office and buck the supermarket, buck looking for a part. And what you doing? Sending the Prime Minister or the Governor General to go to PriceSmart or ShopSmart or Cost Less? How? Or Solo? Thank you, Dr. Walter. We can't. So I'm saying, if we're dealing with fixing and making wrong things right, let's do a holistic. If you want the details of sacrifice, check me. I can talk to you about all to both, the Governor General and the Prime Minister. I have that peculiar ability from personal experience and exposure. The child of a politician is a special breed. So that's putting it out there. And you can't resent it because it's a way of life. But that doesn't mean that you should not be thanked for it. You're not supposed to have to ask for it though. But you can be thanked for it. Because you do make sacrifice. You make the sacrifice of yourself. You sacrifice your family. You sacrifice your life. And yes, you said yes to being asked to do it. That does not mean that you should not be thanked properly for it. You cannot send our heads of state out into the sunset like how we've been doing it for the past however long we've been doing it. It's not righteous. It is not righteous. We have to do better, Mr. President. So I am imploring the government. I know when we bring things in here, it is usually that we can pass it today. But I hope that somebody will go back to the drawing board and have a holistic look at how to treat our people. And you know what? When you're looking, look for yourself. When y'all are drafting, look and see how you are impacted as a minister. And then when you are finished, remember us in this house. A car, a driver, and at least a personal assistant. There's a cost attached. The sacrifice is worth more than those 3 items, Mr. President. But at least, as they say in that show, Coming Home, it will at least show thanks from a grateful nation. Thanks from a grateful nation. Yeah, today I'm a little passionate though. Just a little. But it hits very close to home, especially what they did, the Prime Minister. Our people, our people, our people, our people, our people. Now, Mr. President, I wish you to have a look. Well, I'm going to say it. You can choose if to look. I know that Miss Senator McConney is going to look, though. She's made notes. I'm vexed, though. You know what I wanted to say too, just in case people get caught up with not understanding the real? I said earlier that the Prime Minister does not just visit centenarians, and I must say that visiting the Governor General does not just visit centenarian. But I wanted to share, the Governor General also assents to legislation, as we all know. She reviews appeals. You know, when we put onto legislation that there's an appeal to the Governor General, that's real. And there's not as if Government House has a legal department to help the Governor General with the appeals. The staff at Government House does not look at appeals. The Governor General is the person who reviews appeals. Fortunately, we have a Governor General who has a distinguished and outstanding legal background. But trust and believe, and please understand, reviews of appeals by the Governor General is a literal thing as it relates to the position of Governor General. The Governor General also chairs meetings of the Privy Council. The Governor General reviews applications for retiring awards, and the Governor General, among other things, chairs the Rhodes Scholarship Committee. So the Governor General of Barbados is truly a busy person. Not just the current incumbent, but the position of Governor General. We all see what the position of Prime Minister entails. There is no listen, yesterday I listened to the Prime Minister say she taken 2 weeks break, and I turned up my TV because I thought I misunderstood. I can't believe she was saying those words. That's not who she is. I commend her. Remember? And you know what else happens to public servants? You feel compelled to tell people your private business to help control rumors. So you talk out your medical business like it's our business, man. It is not. But it doesn't stop people from still killing you off. You talk out your private business, which you shouldn't have to do, and they still. You heard the Prime Minister dead? Why? Our Minister of Education, oh my goodness, every step of the way. Pictures, videos. We call that, Mr. President, unbelievable sacrifice. It's your private business. We should not have to put it in the public domain. But we're doing it anyway, and we'll pay our public servants. Look after those in high places properly. Do not make beggars and paupers of our former prime ministers and former governor generals who are still alive. And you know, in the United States, you still call presidents president. What? Wait, we got president coming up. Oh, wait. President 1, President 2, President 3. We need to stop, give Jackie, give honor where it is due. Nobody ain't send me, Mr. President. I'm speaking from knowledge. Our people go above and beyond in certain areas. And you know what I also encourage people to do? Don't look at the individual who's holding the position. What you have to do is look at the position. Respect the position. You don't have to like the person. The fact means that is who it is. Respect the position. I hope that my words have not fallen on deaf ears. And I disagree, Mr. Senator Franklin, that you should not be able, that vacationing at home don't make sense. Because Senator Cummings will say, if you go on a staycation, you're helping the tourism industry. We gotta keep hope alive. We gotta keep people in work. Let's do this thing properly, and let's honor our people, and stop being apologetic for doing the right thing. Mr. President, I thank you for your time, for listening, and for nodding in between. That encourages me to keep going. I don't have a difficulty with these bills. I hope that they're the catalyst for more change and for at least a holistic view on how to do it in one go. Sit down. You know how y'all good with committees? You know how y'all just do a committee or something? Do a committee on reviewing the Governor General and the Prime Minister and what to do with them. And I have one last thing to say, Mr. President. I find that we are currently spending time on a bill that's the Governor General that, according to the Prime Minister, in a few months will no longer exist. I just thought I should add that in for fun. We're doing a Governor General thing in a President environment. So just know this got to change anyhow. So by the time it got to change, add in some things for the ministers, parliamentary secretaries, the Prime Minister, the Governor General, and who else? Senators. I'm obliged to you, Mr. President. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tate. Senator Greenwich.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am going to be extremely brief. That's a fact. Sir, these three pieces of legislation which come under the cognate umbrella for discussion this evening says to me, sir, that this is an omission which should have been rectified ever since. Should have been made official, allowing them to go on holiday with pay. Should have been done a long time ago. As someone who used to be going to ILO conferences in Geneva, I can tell you, sir, that that organization looks at vacation as though it is a human right. It is indeed, sir, a labor law right. No one, and I mean no one, sir, should be expected to work for 12 consecutive months without a vacation. In the eyes of the ILO, these persons that we're dealing with, ministers, parliamentary secretaries, prime minister, and so on, these are in the same category where the ILO is concerned as other employees. They are indeed, sir, employees of the state. They are workers in the truest sense of the word. And as I say, perhaps for the third time now, sir, that this type of legislation should have been enacted a long time ago. As you know, sir, trade unions in Barbados argue continuously that workers must be entitled to vacation. And in particular, so when they argue, they stress that they mean workers such as maids and general workers and clerical officers. But it is my position, sir, that it should never be argued or even hinted that because you hold a high office, you are not entitled to a vacation as well. Whether you are at the bottom of the ladder or whether you are at the top, the argument should be the same. You see, Mr. President, as human beings, the bodies of our ministers will need rest like anybody else. The Prime Minister's, and I don't mean this Prime Minister, but a Prime Minister's body can break down like anybody else's body. A Prime Minister is not superhuman. You do not become superhuman simply because you are head of government. As we all know, so there are some prime ministers who are there in that office and they look as though they're doing absolutely nothing. And there are others like this one that we have now who perhaps has to do a bit too much. That job, sir, is a very high-powered and a very stressful job. A lot of people aspire to be there, but that job, especially in this day, at this stage, you know, it's extremely stressful, and vacation should be legislated, and I agree with what is being done. Barbados should not forget that we have had 3 prime ministers who have died in office. I know, sir, that there will be those who will say, we put them there to work. What vacation what? Yes, there are people who will say that. And this legislation, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. President, has nothing to do with which party is in office. I think, sir, that this should be a bipartisan debate, almost like a coming together debate. But there are some who see everything that we do in terms of politics, the air we breathe, the clothes we wear, the friends we keep, are all seen through that political lens. This present Prime Minister has had it rough. Very, very rough. I believe that she's had more pressure in that office in 3 years than some people had in 10. She has had it rough. There's constant stress in her job. And I can say, sir, that she is in office at a time when, quite frankly, a lot of us would not want to be Prime Minister. I heard Senator Franklin say that this is not the best way to do it. I do believe that we are using the best method. Senator Franklin said that we should revoke the minister's office and then appoint someone else to act when he's going on vacation. So that would be an extremely clumsy way, a most unorthodox way of doing it. Because that minister then has to be sworn in again. He says that this is an unnecessary waste of parliamentary time. Strangely enough, when I heard the leader of the opposition speak on this same bill, he had the exact opposite view. And sir, as a minister of government, you never really and truly get a weekend off. You never get a weekend off. Sometimes, if you are attending a conference overseas, what you had to do was to inform the CAPSEC that the conference would finish on the 4th of the month and that you'll take 3 days or whatever and return on the 7th. That was the convention used by quite a few ministers. That is the way they took their vacation. I did mine like that. Because of the nature of your position, once you are on island, even on the weekends and so on, you have to work. Could imagine a minister of sports, and I had that role for a while, saying that you're going to rest this weekend. When there's some thing at the stadium or at the gymnasium that you have to attend. You can imagine our Minister of Health in this day and age saying, I'm going to rest this weekend. Parliamentarians do not really use weekends for recess. You work as a minister, sir, once you are on island with no break at all. It is hard work. And that kind of non-stop work is not easy. I remember being Minister of Labor, and for 2 nights straight, Sir Roy and Bobby Morris kept me up 2 a.m. one morning and 3 a.m. the following morning in a labor dispute. And you keep going and going at that kind of pace and never really getting anything called an official vacation. As I said, what would happen is if you travel, you may take an extra day or 2. I used to speak on this fairly often, and I always advocated so that ministers should be taking short vacations and taking short vacations frequently. My proposal then, that the recipe that I had, I used to tell them, that you should take 2 weeks every 6 months. You don't have to take your 4 weeks one time. You can take 2 weeks every 6 months, and that would serve its purpose. Sir, I have heard some reference being made to Section 4A1. The holder of an office, set out in column 1, is entitled to 4 weeks paid vacation leave annually. I, sir, would have gone a bit further, because I would have insisted that not only you are entitled to this vacation, but that you actually take it. That is where I would have gone with that particular section. Because I would want to see in that section that word shall. You shall take the vacation. I don't want it to be any may or any guessing about whether you can take it thing and some more can go forward and you ain't take all this here and that thing. No, you shall take it. And that is what I wanted to see. In other words, it does not merely permit the vacation, it requires you to take the vacation. That section is what I would have done. I would have done there. I am all for making it mandatory, sir. I'm all for making it mandatory. And I say that because I know of certain ministers who may still not want the vacation even though we've legislated it. I can think about 6 workaholics among them who feel that without their presence, that the work in the minister's office will not be done as they want it to be done. We always run into that danger, that some of them may not want to take it. They feel that they just have to be there. I have known public servants that you virtually had to drag out of the office screaming and send them on leave. They wouldn't take it. They wouldn't take it. Some of them would tell you that they prefer to have the money in lieu of the vacation. You know, I'm not saying that of the ministers. I'm saying, though, that I know some of them who would prefer to be there instead of going off on holiday. I know, Mr. President, as I said, it would be short and I'm coming home soon. But I believe, sir, that it would be slightly embarrassing if after speaking about the need for a vacation in the manner that other members of the Senate have spoken, that some of the ministers refuse to take the holidays. Because then we as senators would be forced to ask ourselves, why go to the trouble of making it legal if the beneficiaries of the legislation do not treat it as a necessity? We may very well simply come to the conclusion that we should have allowed things to remain as they were. In closing, Mr. President, I think we should commend the government for making sure that holidays for our Prime Minister, our cabinet ministers, parliamentary secretaries now fall within a legal framework. I think that that is crucial, that we now have it as part of a legal package. I think, sir, it is being done the correct way. And it will no longer be done in what Senator McConney described as an ad hoc manner. It is always best to have a statute that gives you that power, that jurisdiction. Always to have a statute to refer to. This measure of putting it into legislation acknowledges the fact, too, that the human body is not a machine, and that the human body will underperform if it is not given a rest after a certain non-stop period. And we want our ministers to perform at their optimum. In taking the action which we've done, we are following ILO guidelines. The ILO has made it quite clear that those who have people's lives in their hands, people like pilots and doctors, must only work for so many consecutive hours without a break. That is there. And so, I do believe, sir, that vacation for our ministers that this too, the ILO will say, is extremely good labor law. I'm obliged to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Greenwich. Senator Maynard.
Mr. President, since there has been such extensive debate and the vast majority of what I wish to say has been said already by several persons, I do not now need to speak.
Thank you very much, Senator Maynard. Senator Wiggins.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. That is almost my statement too, but I want to reiterate it because I was very concerned after dealing with the 3 bills. I thought about what happens to the office of the Prime Minister and the Governor General after they demit office. And what I realized is that recently a former Prime Minister died. And you're hearing all these glorious things about him. And while he was alive and as a former Prime Minister, I found that people did not reach out to him, did not go the extra mile for him. But we are people that like people to die. And then we say all these nice things about them. And I personally feel that the holders of this office, of these offices, both the former, because I think we have one former Governor General alive, Sir Elliot Belgrave, and I think a former Senator, Alwyn Adams, just wrote a book on him. And these persons, after demitting office, Mr. President, and as I said, I have it right here, a lot of it was said, they should definitely have a personal assistant. They should have a driver. I know they're entitled to a duty-free vehicle, but the driver should not be just on special occasions to take them to the doctor or an official occasion. They should have a driver 24/7. In other countries, Mr. President, when prime ministers demit office, they still have their staff that is paid for by the state. And I think that Barbados has to acknowledge and not be afraid to do the things for our leaders when they demit office, because people would say, oh, they're in it for themselves. Mr. President, I can tell you that a former prime minister, I know this personally because I was at the same function, he was on his way to a function and he was driving himself and the car overturned. He got into an accident. And I feel that, you know, we don't treat our former leaders well, even our former members of parliament, because we are a society where we just like to tear down our people. That's how we do it. And sometimes they go places and people want to harass them. So I think also that they should have a personal protection officer every day of the week. And these are things that this legislation, while I support it, I do support it, I feel that we must look at the fact that after these people demit office, Mr. President, that they should not be struggling and suffering. Take, for an example, if they want to go, they have a medical appointment, they should not have to call an ambulance. These things should be at their easy disposal because you have served your country, and as everybody is saying, you can see how hard the current Prime Minister is working. And I do feel that I've always heard that ministers were not entitled to a vacation. And most of them sometimes would have to tack on a day or two when they leave the country on official travel. But ministers, you should not be afraid to discuss these things. We have to learn to treat people well, Mr. President, and I want to emphasize that here. And I believe that after this, I don't know if there'll be further amendments when we become a republic in November with the things that we are asking for today, Mr. President. But I do support the legislation, but I would like it to go further
and have the staff, a personal assistant, a personal protection officer, a driver, and even the vehicle that can be paid for by the state. So, Mr. President, I hope that you take those few things on board in any future amendments. And with these few words, Mr. President, I'm obliged to you.
Senator Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had not intended at all to speak on this bill. For the first time, probably, or the number of times it has happened, I can probably count on one hand, Mr. President, where I have found myself in a position where I had to excuse myself from the Senate chamber because I found the comments being made at the time so outrageous and so offensive that I chose not to participate in the debate, Mr. President, and so I excused myself while the leader of the opposition was speaking. Because, Mr. President, and it is after that that I made the decision that I would intervene on this bill. And I rise, Mr. President, to speak on behalf of the government of which I'm a part, of the cabinet in which I now sit, just approximately a year ago on the 23rd of July when I was sworn in. Now, Mr. President, all that has been said by the colleagues in the chamber is accurate. Senator Boyce, Senator Hunt, I am completely now losing the names in front of me. Senator Wiggins and Senator Maynard all spoke about the sacrifices which were made, and Senator Greenidge, who himself, a former minister, spoke in great detail. Senator Tate, she has the opportunity to recap her own personal experience, Mr. President, but I want to speak on behalf of this cabinet. Mr. President, this has been a cabinet that Prime Minister has described as a war cabinet. This has been a cabinet that treated to the fiscal crisis facing the country in the first instance, COVID a year after we came to office, a volcano, and then a hurricane, and in between there, a freak storm, Mr. President. The notion that this is a cabinet that does not work and ministers don't do anything is completely offensive and utterly out of place, Mr. President, in this cabinet. Mr. Cabinet, we don't have the luxury of working 5 days a week. We work 7 days a week. Mr. President, we work sometimes 20 hours a day. You could get a call on one thing or the other at any hour of the night, and you always are on call. Mr. President, I entered this chamber in March this year, and I've almost lost track of the day, and people still see me on the streets and everywhere else, and they say, by the way, Lisa, congratulations. And I ask, for what? Because I've so far almost forgotten that I got married in March. But, Mr. President, I got married in March. Senator Rogers married me. I got married on the Saturday.
He did? I thought
the ceremony.
He was married already.
Performed the ceremony. Performed my marriage ceremony.
I'm glad you clarified that.
Yes. And Mr. President, I remember going to Prime Minister Motley and saying, Prime Minister, it was the Thursday after Cabinet, and I said to PM, I'm asking for 2 days off. And I was asking for a Friday and a Saturday, a weekend day. And she said to me, okay, well, no problem, what's happening? And I said, well, I'm getting married on Saturday. She said, oh, and she made a joke, and she says, and you're not asking for the day off afterwards as well, which was the Sunday. But that is instructive, Mr. President. Even on a Sunday, the notion that you're asking for the day off is a misnomer. And I said to her, Mr. PM, I think I'll be all right on the Sunday. And I was back to work on the Monday. In fact, I was responding to emails on the Sunday after my marriage and my wedding. That's the life we live, Mr. President. We have another member of cabinet in the other place. She was writing and delivering a speech on the day after her own wedding. She will tell you that herself. Mr. President, we don't have the luxury of time off. We work every day, all year long. And the notion that anybody would say that we don't is offensive, Mr. President. And now we function in an environment where there is this, and there is this, This morning, for example, Mr. President, I found I had to speak at an event at Sandals. I was at Sandals this morning from 8 o'clock, and the event started at 8:30, and I got there at 8 o'clock because I had to do a session first. I did the event, I did the radio program, and then I had to leave because I had to speak to the annual general meeting of the TDC at 10 o'clock. Senator Grant can attest to this. He was in the meeting. On my way driving to Senate from Sandals up the street, in my car, I was in the meeting on my phone with the anchor on my phone mounted on my car, and they could see me driving, and I am speaking in an annual general meeting. I came here, I continued the meeting in the Parliament room, and by 11 a.m. I was in my seat. I left my seat, Mr. President, to join the leader of government business, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who himself has just come back from traveling and came right into, after quarantining and testing, came right back into service, Mr. President. We don't get time off. And I joined him for lunch with the President of the United Nations General Assembly, and I'm back in my seat in Senate. And if I'm not lucky, I may have a Zoom meeting later on this evening. Mr. President, on a Sunday afternoon, when the rest of Barbados is eating Sunday food and napping on the afternoon, the leader of government business could call a meeting at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon for the Cabinet COVID subcommittee. That is the life we live. So the notion that we don't work and we're not working is a nonsense, and I don't want to sit in my seat comfortably and allow that message to go out in the public about the cabinet in which I sit. Senator Tate spoke about our Prime Minister. What many people don't know, but what my colleagues know, is that on the morning of the viewing of her brother in Queen's Park, where many Barbadians came publicly to see and to grieve with her, she chaired a meeting of cabinet and left cabinet and went to her brother's viewing. The rest of the ordinary Barbadians like us, in principle, will be at home with their families, dealing with the funeral home, putting final arrangements in place, and we grudge her a jet ski ride? In truth, that is who we are. The evening after we left viewing her brother's body in Queen's Park, Mr. President, there was a matter on which she messaged me. And I responded to her and I said, PM, ... Really? PM, I have this. I have you. Deal with yourself and your family right now. Do not worry. I have it. That is the Prime Minister we have. That is the life that this cabinet lives, Mr. President. That is the life that this Prime Minister and these ministers live. And our families make the sacrifice for it. Our bodies make the sacrifice for it. I'm sure that many people look at me sometimes and they say, Lisa, we can hardly see your eyes, you look tired. And you drink a cup of coffee, you sleep for a couple hours, you get up and go again. So the notion that there is going to be a fueling of the discussion over whether or not we came here to work or not by virtue of us being given the same rights that the same trade union leader has stood up for and fought for in every single incarnation for every other worker in this country is too much a human right and a labor right, is outrageous, offensive, and below the standard required for this place. And I had to excuse myself and I had to rise to speak about it, Mr. President. I want to call on Barbadians in the same way that Senator Tate did, in the same way that Senator Wiggins did, to humanize the people who serve, to recognize the sacrifices that the people who serve make. Many people came to office with salaries that were significantly higher than those that we get here. They came with medical insurance. We don't have medical insurance. We don't have vacation. We don't have sick leave. But we're here to serve. We serve because we love our country, and our families serve right along with us because everything that we go through, they see. And they vow never to have any part of public life for it, Mr. President. They want no part of it. That is the reality of the life we live. So I don't know how we could grudge these people, this cabinet, any cabinet, from any party, vacation and sick leave. It is a basic human right. It is a basic labor right. And the final point that I want to make, Mr. President, lest there be any misunderstanding, we are not asking for paid vacations, as in paid vacations that somebody pays for us to go off to the Orient, because that's the next set of nonsense that may get spread out there. No one is paying for our vacations. No one is sending us anywhere. We are choosing to either staycation here, to stay in our homes. We're choosing to have our Prime Minister be able to take a break from the rigors of her office, our Governor General, to be able to do the same, and for our ministers and parliamentary secretaries in every incarnation subsequent to this cabinet to be able to enjoy the same labor rights, the same human rights that every other worker in this country enjoys. And with these few words, Mr. President, I commend these bills to this House. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Cummings. Senator McConney.
No, Mr. President, after that contribution, I almost want to say amen. But that is not my place. Sir, I will not reflect on all of the contributions that were made, because I think we have some general themes that have run through all of the presentations, or at least most of them. One theme being that they think, well, you know what, there needs to be greater equity. We need to even do more for various public officials, and that even though there may be some improvements that can be made, I'll use the term of Senator Hunt, who said he applauds the spirit of the effort, even though he was pointing out that there were some other things that could also be done. Certainly, we will continue to look at the legislation that's related to parliamentarians, as Senator Greenidge and others would have suggested. We also are seeking to look at a holistic approach regarding parliamentarians, and in that regard, I want to refer to the Parliamentary Reform Commission that's in the process of being set up under the chairmanship, I believe, of Sir Richard Cheltenham. And we are now working on approving those terms of reference and looking to make sure that the right representatives of civil society, opposition, government, and all of the different key stakeholders and shareholders in the success of Barbados are a part of that, and to make sure that we are able to come up with some type of holistic approach to how we address the situation of parliamentarians. And sir, it is just with that reminder that I want to thank all honorable senators for their contributions, and I beg to move that this bill be again read a second time.
Thank you, Senator McConney. The question is that this bill be read a second time. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that your honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for the further consideration of this bill. Bill number 4, which is the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Amendment Bill 2021.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and the Honorable Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
We have, I was trying to seek from the clerk if he's calling 4 and 4A. So we can do 4.
4. 4 is 4. 4 is 4.
You can call 4A? No, just 4. Because okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hunt raised an issue, and I would like to see it addressed because the wording is not clear and it could lend for misinterpretation. Like for instance, if you go to the Servant Payments Act, you have, for each completed year of service, you get 2 years. 2.5 weeks, 2.5 weeks pay, up to 10 years, and then 3.5 for the next 10, and then it goes. And the same thing with the Employment Rights Act. For the first 9 years, you get 2.5 weeks. Then you get 3.5. So this, the way things are interpreted in our laws right now, this means that a minister for serving a year will get 4 weeks. But he's entitled to, for every completed year, he gets 4 weeks. So if you have 2 completed years, that means you get 8 weeks. And Senator Hunt raised that issue, and it wasn't addressed. And I just want to find out if this is, I know this cannot be the intention, but it is badly worded here.
Four weeks paid vacation leave annually can only mean 4 weeks per year. Mm-hmm. For 4 weeks. For 4 weeks. Every year you qualify for 4 weeks. Yeah. Pedro. No. Every week you're entitled to 4 every year. Pedro. Clause 4. Question is that clause 4?
Yes.
So the question is that clause 4 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
come, Pedro.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill now be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Ministers and Parliamentary Secretaries Remuneration and Allowances Amendment Act 2021.
The question is that this bill do now pass and be so cited. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
5, Constitution. Order number 5, sir.
Order number 5.
In the name of the Honorable Acting Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Constitution Amendment Bill 2021.
Mr. President, in light of the cognate debate that has just passed, I beg to move that this bill now be read the second time.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and the Honorable Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to Clause 3, sir, at Clause 3, subclause 1B, line 3. So we're looking at to perform the functions of his office.
Pedro,
Do you have it, sir?
I'm trying to get it.
Clause 3.
Yes?
I'm referring to line 3. I beg your pardon, sir. So we're looking at Clause 3, subclause 1B, line 3. It starts, a member of the House of Assembly. You would need to change the E to a Y, sir.
Okay. I'm informed that this has already been noted and changed treat it as a typo.
Yes, that's
And
fine, sir. I was not aware and I was bringing it to the chamber's attention.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. But that might be.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Mr. Chairman, sir. Clause 4, sir. On page 5, sir. Line 5, unless it's already been changed. 1, 2, 3, 4. If we read from line 4, says the functions of the office of the absent minister or assigned the functions, and it goes on to the office. I believe the word missing from there is of. So it reads properly, sir.
The functions of the office of the absent minister or assign the functions
Of the
of
office,
the office.
of the absent minister. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm informed that this also has been changed, the typo.
Much obliged, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Question is that clause 4 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Constitution Amendment Act 2021.
As you're aware, this act is being amended under Section 49 of the Constitution, and therefore requiring a 2/3 majority of all the members of the Senate. Ordinarily, we would have, this is what's called a division, and you would ring a bell, but there's no bell, obviously. And we have 18 members who are here present, and the 2 who are not here, those who can vote. I mean, there are 2 who are not here who have indicated that they will not be here. So there's no need to therefore ring a bell to get their attendance. So we can start the process.
Proceed.
Senator Walker.
Aye.
Senator McConney.
Aye.
Senator Cummins.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Holder.
Aye.
Senator Sands.
Aye.
Senator Grant. Aye. Senator Dr. Hinds.
Aye.
Senator Adams. Aye. Your Honor, Senator Greenidge. Aye. Senator Franklin.
Aye.
Senator Driggs.
Aye.
Senator Wiggins. Aye. Senator Dr. Rogers.
Aye.
Senator Hunt.
Aye.
Senator Tate.
Aye.
Senator Maynard. Senator Maynard? Aye. Right. Senator Boyce?
Aye.
Senator Nurse?
Aye.
Mr. President, the results of the division, 18 honorable senators have voted in favor of the amendment, therefore satisfying the 2/3 threshold in accordance with the Constitution of Barbados.
This bill is now passed in accordance with the Constitution and so cited. Order number 3, sir.
Order number 3.
Just hold a minute, ma'am.
in the name of the Honorable Acting Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Governor General Conditions of Service Amendment Bill 2021.
Senator McConney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I beg to move that the Governor General Conditions of Service and Amendment Bill 2021 be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be read second time. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and this Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and the Honorable Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Clause 2.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part.
Senate.
Sir, inasmuch as I had said that what the legislative amendments that you're doing is, or the amendments rather, are not sufficient to effect these things, you still got this one right. And I have a little difficulty with the fact that the Governor General will be entitled to 4 weeks vacation, because the Governor General is the head of state in Barbados, the highest office in the land. She has people working for her now that will be entitled to more vacation than she is entitled to. You see, in the public service, as we know it, vacation is determined by salary. An executive officer, you have clerical officer, senior clerk, executive officer. An executive officer at the top of their scale, Z11, is entitled to 42 days vacation. You know how far you got to get from there to Governor General, but yet still that person will get more vacation than the Governor General. I don't think that is, if you're going to do it, let me do it right. The Governor General should be at least entitled to that 6 week vacation, and according to general orders, the person is entitled to 21 days, and then he's calendar year for sick leave, and 42 days with a maximum accumulation of 126 days, meaning that if you don't take all, you can carry them forward, but you can't carry forward more than 126. You don't treat the Governor General like she's a clerk who's been working for less than 5 years. Something is basically wrong with that. If the ministers want to have 4 weeks and stuff, that's their business. But you have to treat the office of the Governor General a little better. It isn't who is in the office, it is what the office is. And I would prefer that this should be 6 weeks rather than 4. And then again, so that is subclause 1, and I want to also refer to subclause 5. That says that if the Governor General is taking vacation here, she's entitled to accommodation for herself, himself, spouse, and eligible children at such rates as befit the office. That does not say anything. Who determines such rates as befit the office? That is what you call here referee language. Because the Governor General, again, her conditions of service should be known to her. This does not make the her terms and conditions known. It is too loose. And that too, sir, should be fixed before I say aye. Because I don't have a difficulty with people getting vacations, as I said. It's just that this wasn't done with much thought. And I am seeing Senator Walker tell me he did it. Thank you.
Any other contribution on it?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I sincerely wish to thank Senator Franklin for his contribution. As I would have mentioned earlier, there is a Parliamentary Reform Commission that will certainly be looking at such matters in a more holistic manner. And that being the case, we would beg that this Honorable Senate do now permit for us to allow that Clause 2 stand part.
Question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Governor General Conditions of Service Amendment Act 2021.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be so cited. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is therefore now passed and so cited.
Adjournment. Mr. President, this concludes the business of the government for today. I beg to move that this sitting now be adjourned, sine die.
Speaking on the adjournment, sir, I, like Senator Tate, am concerned about the facilities available to us. I well remember every person elected or appointed to these two houses are entitled to a set of the laws of Barbados. We have been here 3 years. We don't have them. And many times when you try to log on onto Parliament's website to get the laws, it is down. So sometimes we are operating in a vacuum and hoping for the best. Sir, something must be done to equip senators not only with a bit more pay, but we need the tools to work with. This is my basket and hoe, but you can't wear the basket. I need to have the laws in a tangible form, something that I can use. But Senator was speaking about you're going through so many amendments and you don't know what is happening. We are the only set of MPs that have never been given a set of laws of Barbados. Why are you treating me like some outside child? You know, come and think of it, you always treat me like an outside child because they fix the roads done by me and they fix all the people left with mine. So it seems as though yeah, thank you. So I would hope that they do something to equip us with our tools. Thank you so much, sir.
Mr. President, sir, if I may, I don't know if this is the time to ask this question, but I'm just. Oh.
Please proceed.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm
I'm
just
listening to you, Senator Day.
wondering, Mr.
Proceed.
President, what is the status of the elevator to this building? Pardon me? Oh, we are, I think, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Generously and without quarreling, coming here to do the people's business, but it takes us 8 flights of stairs to get here. And as the boniest person in the Senate, I'm just wondering, what's the position, sir?
Thank you, Senator.
Especially when you have a load with books and papers and so on. I'm just wondering how soon we can expect to have the elevator working again.
I've just been advised by the Clerk of Parliament that the facilities manager of the building advised that during the passage of Hurricane Elsa, water got into one of the parts in the elevator. The technicians have identified that part is being ordered, has to come from China. It's being ordered, and due to shipping constraints and congestion, has taken some delay, but there's optimism that by the next time we meet, the matter should be resolved. The part should be on island and installed.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Sir? Yes, and in relation to Senator Franklin, I've been advised that several sessions ago, before this Parliament, a decision had been taken there were some challenges in relation to the paper volumes of the laws. And it was decided to discontinue the production of the paper volumes and to go electronic. A contract was awarded, I've been advised, and the laws have been uploaded in the electronic form up to 2008. Just as they would have been available in the paper volume if they had been delivered at that time. Some further checks I have to make to see what has been the progress from 2008 to now in relation to the electronic versions. The clerk has indicated as well that he's not aware of there being sustained difficulties in accessing the laws via the website. So we might need to speak more directly in terms of times and places, but I'll also check, continue to check with him on that. But that's the update that I've been given by the Clerk of Parliament. But we definitely will, because you would appreciate that this is one that any matter of the publication of the laws of Barbados, whether in print or electronic, is a matter that's pursued in association with the AG's chambers, the Law Reform Committee, and, well, you're an expert, that's your area, Senator Franklin. I've trespassed there, just go good on that with you. But there's definitely every desire, and I will certainly join in your call and your push to ensure that we all have the tools that we need to work with in terms of easy access to the original laws, so that when amendments are being considered, will not be in any way hamstrung in conducting the relevant research. So I will continue to liaise with the clerk and other relevant authorities to have that matter addressed. So thank you very much for raising an important, fundamental issue, but the fact is that this is a project that has been ongoing for several years now to bring us to the point of full electronic access to the laws of Barbados in an easy fashion. Yes. The question is that this Honourable Senate, we now adjourn Senate Day. Those Honourable Senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This Senate stands adjourned Senate Day.